Okay, so another question that's frequently asked is Chinatown dying, right? That's a perception a lot of people have. Um, I think if we as a community decide that we want to let it die, then yes, of course it will. Is there anything there worth maintaining? Is there a new form of life and transformation that can occur in there that we can have historical continuity and transformation? I think that's possible too if there's a will. Um, there are huge forces at play, economic forces at play around that district. Um, Development of condominium spaces, not necessarily in a market that many people can afford anymore. We all know about the incredible polarization of income in Vancouver that's ongoing. Chinatown is, it's part of that web of complex financial forces at work. Um, so really, we as a community have to decide, all right, do we want it and why? Can we keep? Is it important enough to maintain? I've already said why I think it's important, and that's based also on the many people I've talked to over the years working on and actually hanging out in Chinatown. I mean, I've been in Chinatowns, first in Calgary and Edmonton and now in Vancouver and also in Toronto since I was 17. I mean, I've been down in Chinatown a lot. And that includes volunteering in Chinese senior centers, at cultural centers and so on. So I'm not talking about just walking through Chinatown. I mean actually getting involved in the life in there. And of course, my extended family, being from South China originally, um, the older folks lived in Chinatown, right? So, um, you know, it doesn't have to die if people are living their lives there, if people have social networks there, if there's a lively cultural scene going on down there. Then no, it doesn't have to die. It can be a vibrant, interesting place. I mean, there are people. One one obvious person that comes to mind is Carol Lee's work, um, putting a tremendous amount of her personal energy, effort, and financial resources into making businesses happen down there. Um, it takes that kind of chutzpah, that kind of will to just say, well, no, we can make it happen. We can make it lively. Jade Dynasty. I'm sorry, I'm kind of pitching these places, but I just want to give you examples. Jade Dynasty, right? They cleaned the restaurant up. They reorganized it. Open for dim sum all day. People hang out in there. I go in there for dim sum. I always see people I know, and people of all different generations. Um, so there's a perception that it's dying, but it doesn't have to be that way. Yeah, we're losing. I mean, there was an interesting, a very valuable food securities report that Hua Foundation put out recently that points out how, talking about the intersection of development, culture, and food, and how food is implicated in some of these transformations and how we're losing retail spaces, barbecue shops and fishmongers and so on. That these places are disappearing. But I think we can see how we can push back. We can create those spaces. We can maintain them. So yeah, where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a sense of community solidarity around the importance of a space, there will be action to maintain it. And you can see plenty of energy being poured into Chinatown. I don't think it's dead at all. I think it's at a crux. I think it's at a point where it can go one way or the other. But I very much hope that it doesn't just continue in the way it's always done. I mean, in fact, it never has. Chinatown's been under continual transformation, right, through the early 20th century all the way through the 50s and 60s. It's always been transforming. It's like any other urban space. It's just whether or not you can have a thread of continuity and integrity that says it's still Chinatown, um, our Chinatown.
I think Vancouver Chinatown has always had its peaks and valleys. Depending on the era, Chinatown has reached its many high points. At one point in the early 1970s, it was known as an exotic area for the best Chinese food in Canada. So you had, whenever Pierre Elliott Trudeau came to town, he would be lining up, at the Marco Polo for Chinese food. I mean, that's how famous some of the restaurants in Chinatown was at that time in the 70s and 60s, and before that, WK Gardens was another one. The nightclub Kubla Khan was the go-to place for many people. So the peaks and valleys of Chinatown come and go. Currently, some people have seen Chinatown as dying. Certainly, it has been going on a downhill since the 1990s, and you've seen business moving out of Chinatown. In fact, many people now say that Chinatown is all throughout Vancouver, with the heart of it in the city of Richmond. And to a certain extent, that's true. But the shape and the composition of Chinatown businesses has always changed. It hasn't always stayed static. I think this notion of Chinatown being Chinatown that we know of it is really a nostalgic. It's almost mythological in a way. In many ways, I see this Chinatown of current days. Actually, I see seeds of it growing. You see restaurants moving in and opening up. I think that's also alarmed a lot of people as well, as a example of gentrification. But in many ways, you see Chinatown has evolved over time as well, with the different businesses, different clientele. I think what we're seeing now is a very shifting of Chinatown, expanding and in many ways conglomerated with sort of the city downtown core. And that has created some tension as well with certainly the downtown east side, which for many years has been, at the periphery of Chinatown, in many ways a part of Chinatown. So we're seeing a lot of that tension between the old Chinatown, as many people have seen it, and also sort of a newer Chinatown. In terms of the name of Chinatown, it's a historical accordance and also homage to the past of many families living in Chinatown. But if you look at the history of Chinatown, particularly the Strathcona region, and it has always been multicultural. You've seen it was seen as a multicultural enclave of the city of Vancouver. The Strathcona school there had many Jewish children, Italian children, all new immigrant families living in that area. But over time, we've seen it be called Chinatown and recognized as Chinatown. But that history, that multicultural history, is very important. And I think in order for us to really understand Chinatown, we have to look back into history and see how, in many ways, it's a continuation of the evolution of the area as well. So to say that Chinatown is dying, I think, is an incomplete history of our understanding of Chinatown. It evolves and it reshapes and reformulates, and it has its highs and has its lows as well. So it's very difficult for us to say that it's dying. I can only say that it's changing.